Hello and welcome to the Calm Blue Podcast live on YouTube. Is this John singing, says Jacob. Dan Bardell, rumours of Rolinson investing in a decent theme tune soon. I mean, that is probably the only transfer movement we're getting this year, and even that's not happening. Theme tune slaps, says Daniel Jenkins. Oh, I really like our theme tune, John, do you?
Sorry, you completely caught me off guard. I was preparing to talk about transfers and Emery, and we're talking about me singing. I like the theme tune. Yeah, I was going to say this the other day actually that it's starting to catch on with me now. I like
a year into using it.
Yeah. I never really realised it, to be fair, but now that we do the live streams, you can hear it more elongated. So yeah, I rate it. It's good.
Yeah, good. This podcast is sponsored by NordVPN. All the information you need for Nord, including a delicious discount code, is in the description down below. We're here today to talk about Leicester City. It's obviously deadline day, so we'll talk transfers or lack of. We'll talk about Unai Emery's presser, Leicester City, various different bits and pieces. John, it's been a long day for you. It's not over yet. A long week, really kind of busy start to the season. How are you? You okay? You hanging in there?
Yeah. I am. I'm very tired at the moment. Tomorrow's going to be a really busy day as well for different reasons, and got a week off next week, so I'm doing well. Obviously, really enjoying it. So yeah, I'm doing good. I feel I haven't signed anyone as we talk now, and as we'll get on to, it's very unlikely at this stage that anything does happen. RE arrivals, but just deadline days. Villa fans will be watching at home thinking, well, nothing's happened. Anything that has happened, which is Bernache, is left on loan. That was basically done as of last night. So yeah, probably doesn't make much sense that we're here complaining that we're tired and whatever. But when you're working in it, it just takes it out of you. And I had a presser today and an hour and a half on the motorway because there was a crash. Hopefully everyone's okay. I don't know. I'm rambling now. It's just been a very, very long day. I'm not asking for any sympathy though. But yeah, tomorrow, if Villa can win the game tomorrow, it's all sound like really good start to the season. That would be, wouldn't it? 6 points out of 9. Yeah, looking forward to tomorrow. Hopefully we can get another win under our belts and kind of just enter the international break and kind of settle down a bit. Start the season is now finished, basically, at that stage. And we can kind of crack on from there.
God, international break already. Grim, isn't it? Christ. Let's do it then. Let's go through the press conference first. I know a lot of people are going to want to be talking about transfer business. We will get to that and we'll do a whole podcast about it next week, I think, as long as John is around. Let's start with the presser then. What's the kind of key takeaway?
Let me get my notes. Not very organised, all over the place. I mean, it's probably transfers to be fair, but I won't be talking about that. I liked what Emery said about the Champions League, actually. Obviously, we did a video on it. Was that yesterday? Last night? Time flies. And he spoke about how it's nice for the fans to have 2 or 3 big games, the Celtic game included, at Villa Park. He was asked about, would you rather have them at home or away, those big games, but he said that it's nice for the fans, the home fans, to kind of feel the emotion and the atmosphere of those matches, which I agree with. And he said something that I quite liked as well about how we're trying to write like a new history with Villa, and when Villa won the European Cup, which is the best kind of day in the club's 150-year history, a lot of those fans aren't here anymore. A lot of the fans that we have now weren't born or barely remember it, or were very young at the time. You mentioned like Prince William, he wasn't born. I think he was born a couple of months after we won the European Cup, I think. So I like that. It was, kind of a case of Unai, resonating with the fan base again. I like it when that happens because Unai can kind of keep himself to himself a little bit when he's in the presses and can kind of say things that you predict him to say. But it's nice when he comes out with those sort of lines. So yeah, I enjoyed that. A couple of injury updates that we'll get to as well. But yeah, the main thing, Champions League. Spoke obviously about Leicester, how it's going to be a difficult game. Did mention as well how every match is going to be really important this season, as we know. But he came out with a decent line saying that Tottenham finished ahead of us. Sorry, we finished with Tottenham by like 2 points. The season before that, Tottenham finished below us by 1 point and Brentford by 2 points. So although last season especially, it felt like we had Champions League in the bag for a while, it definitely wasn't the case. And that every game is really important this season. And we've started, I think, very well in terms of winning the first match, very difficult game. Arsenal performance was excellent, but we didn't quite get the win. But I get the kind of vibe from Emery that he's very happy with where we are at the start. Again, we'll go on to transfers later, but considering everything we've had to put up with, I personally think, and I feel like Emery agrees, that we are in pretty decent nick, or at least we've started the season well, and hopefully we'll be able to continue that tomorrow. To be fair, everything I've just said about have we started the season well, that kind of bears onto tomorrow. Because if we don't win, then that will feel like we've kind of wasted that West Ham result at the start of the season.
There is an embargoed line at 10:30. I'm treading difficult ground here because it's live. I've not asked you about this beforehand. I'm not asking you to tell me what the story is or who it's about. Can I just at least kind of say, like, I've seen the quotes. It's interesting from Emery to be so outspoken almost. Can you kind of just hint a little bit? Do you know what I'm on about?
I can't, no. You shouldn't have done this on live then. I literally can't say it's embargoed. You'll have to just check at 10:30 what that's about.
Okay, interesting. Let's move on. Injury update next. Not so much so about who is fit and available for this weekend. The kind of biggest one, I suppose, is Tyrone Mings back in full training with the rest of the lads.
Yeah, that's really positive. Really good to see as well. 384 days was my calculation, or I didn't calculate it. A website told me. Since obviously he had his injury against Newcastle start of last season. So yeah, it's been a really long time coming for Mings. I did see him leave the training ground as well in his car, and I did wonder, has he been in training? And we were told that yes, he has, and kind of wait for Villa to put it out themselves, because it's a very nice moment for Mings, and good to see the images of him back in training. Hopefully he can build that build his fitness up for the next few weeks, and I don't know exactly when he'll be back in contention, but next month is the kind of target of when he will hopefully be available for selection or included in the matchday squad. Maybe Ipswich away the end of next month. That would be nice for him, going back to Portman Road as well, obviously the club that he or one of the clubs that he played at the start of his career. So that would be a kind of fitting return for him, I suppose. If it's not at Villa Park, who knows, maybe even the Champions League game that we'll be playing next month. Again, we won't be rushing Mings back. I think that's clear. Like, it's been so long. It's been much longer than Buendia. His injury was much worse than Buendia's as well. Kamara will hopefully be back in training soon as well. So if we can have those two players kind of ready, I suppose, to kind of rely on, let's call it mid-October, then fantastic, because what will be then like 7 games into the season, in the league season. So Champions League matches, 8 of them, plenty of time, plenty of games that they'll be playing over the course of the season, as long as Villa get their recovery right in terms of when they come back. So that's crucial.
The ones that are missing for this weekend, Diego Carlos has a small injury, whatever that is. Matty Cash is going to miss up to a month, I think. So a few games for him. That leaves us looking short in the defence, doesn't it? And this is where I think the frustration ties in with transfers and the lack of. You've obviously got Tyrone Mings coming back at some point, and people can say that's like a new signing because we didn't have him last year specifically. Same with Jacob Ramsey to an extent, didn't feature much at all last year. He's an option now. Buendia the same. So they're kind of like, if you added those in for the first time for Aston Villa this window, that would be kind of like you've made up for their omission last season. I know people don't like that because they're not new signings, but it's still important. But when you look at Carlos not being available, Matty Cash not being available, you've got Nedeljkovic as the only senior choice right back who's 18. You've got Konsa who can play right back, but if he does, there's no centre back, no senior centre back to play there anyway. So this is where I think the frustration comes from, that we're already looking like on it on game week 3. Like if Konsa gets an injury, God forbid, touch wood, John, where if you've got anything there, we're on a massive then, aren't we? You're relying on Bogard or Swinkles coming in and playing first team games. Like, that's not a good position to be in. Talk about the side of it later, but like the injuries are already happening.
Okay, I'll save what I was going to say for later, but yes, that is true. And Carlos, small injury, don't know exactly what it was. Emery was pushed on a kind of, when's he going to be back? Or when do you expect him to be back? And he kind of just said it again. He's going to be out for tomorrow. So don't know exactly the timeline on that. I don't know if Villa do as well. We don't know, considering Carlos has had these kind of niggling injuries before, when it's hard to know exactly when those players will be able to come back to training, and then you don't want to aggravate things. So it is a real frustration, that, because already I think we all knew that specific part of the team was going to be tested at some point in the season. It's literally before the window ends. So and Cash, we said previously a month. So 3 Premier League games and a Champions League match, possibly longer. We'll wait and see. But 3 to 4 weeks for Matty Cash.
Do you think? And again, I'm skirting around the transfer stuff because I know that we'll do that in a bit more detail later, and I think probably next week or the week after. Is there any inclination from Villa's side or Emery's side that like Mings coming back soon, Kamara coming back soon? They think those options are enough to be able to align. We say, don't we, like, oh, if they come back and be the player that they are, that's a bit of an unknown. Villa will have all the data to show their progress so far that we don't have.
Yeah.
Is there anything that to suggest like Mings is back and ready within a few weeks, and that's why we don't need to go and spend in defence because we can go, oh, Tyrone Mings is back and ready now?
Yeah, well, I think if you look at the squad, I keep saying this, and people are probably really bored about it, but right now, when Barrenechea leaves, he's left. We have one space in the Champions League squad if we carry two goalkeepers, and obviously I'm including Mings and Kamara. So we really didn't have. As I said, we have probably one player that we could have brought in, and again with time ticking down on the deadline, it's unlikely that happens now. So we'll probably carry three goalkeepers. As I said, you have to carry a minimum of two, but that was always the case this summer. Like we know that those players are going to come back. There was no point in buying another player who's going to probably push Mings out the side. I just didn't really see that. I know we were linked with quite a few left-sided centre-backs, Hemo, so being one. But yeah, when Mings is going to be coming back, he's still going to be at a good level, I'd have thought. It's certainly an adequate level. And there is always the January window in case Emery feels like we need something more. So I'm okay with those decisions in terms of, I just struggle to think that we're going to cope without something more where we just discussed in the kind of right back to centre back, that position there. That's something that scares me a little bit, but I have no reservations that Mings will be able to come back and perform at a good level. Definitely have no reservations over Kamara because he was only he will only be out for about 6 months, and his injury wasn't anywhere near as bad as what Mings's was. But Mings has come back from something similar before, and yeah, I know he's at an older age now, but I don't think it's worth Villa, considering the constraints that they already have, to bring in another player and then have Mings come back as well. You're paying an extra wage essentially, because last season obviously we had Longley. Now Mings is coming back. I'm okay with that.
Okay. Should we talk about Leicester for a bit and do the opposition view?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, right. So I spoke to Jordan Blackwell earlier, who is the Leicester City correspondent for Leicestershire Live, Leicester Mercury, whatever it's called these days. Jordan last came on when we did a Yuri Tielemans lowdown last year. So here is 5 minutes or so on Leicester City this weekend. Thank you for joining us on the opposition preview. I've got 3 questions for you ahead of Leicester versus Aston Villa at the weekend. Now, the last time we spoke to each other on podcast was a year ago when we signed Yuri Tielemans. So welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
I quite like Steve Cooper as a manager, as a coach. How do you assess his start that he's had at Leicester so far? Obviously, it's very early days, but what are the early signs?
Well, I think the very early signs, and I think this is probably the right way to go about it, is he's tried to keep what was good about last season, but just tweak it slightly to make it to make it better for the Premier League, essentially. I think there was a feeling that Leicester could be a little bit like Burnley, where, they dominate the Championship, they come up to the Premier League, tries to play the same way, and it kind of goes a bit wrong. And, from an outside perspective, it looked like Burnley stuck to their guns throughout the season, and it just never worked. And, they went down with a bit of a whimper in the end. The team did really well last year. There's no point ripping that up, especially because the squad really liked Enzo Maresca. So it's not going to be worth his while, tearing up what they did before, because, it's only going to disillusion the squad. But he's sort of been a little bit more pragmatic about it. They're probably more willing to play on the counter-attack if opportunities present themselves. They still play a similar way. They still want to play with the ball. They still want to progress, through the defence, through winks in the midfield. They still want to have like a line of 4, 2 wide men and 2 attacking midfielders behind a striker when they attack. Slightly differently now, where they would, one of the sort of wide men, is a fullback who advances, and then one of the attacking midfielders is a winger who cuts inside. The feeling around Cooper is that for Leicester fans, maybe it's been slightly difficult because of his Forest connections, and maybe there's a slight distrust there as a result, and maybe he's got to do a little bit more to get everybody to warm to him. It's very early in the season. I think the Spurs home game has probably given everybody a little bit of belief that you know, can, particularly the second half of that game, Leicester can compete against the best teams in the division.
Lots of people fear for Leicester in the season predictions. A lot of people have got Leicester in their bottom three. Now, I don't expect you to come on to, even though it's a Villa podcast, as the Leicester City reporter for a local paper, to come on and go, yes, Leicester City will be relegated. But do you fear that main kind of prediction that Leicester could be in trouble, do you share that same kind of feeling?
When I did a season preview, I predicted Leicester to finish bottom. So I did make the point that I do think they could genuinely finish anywhere between 12th and 20th. I think there's probably a group of 9 teams who are probably going to be that bottom, that bottom 9. It feels like there's a little bit of a gulf. Forest are going to be there. Wolves are going to be there. Everton, Bournemouth, these sorts of clubs. So I think they could finish anywhere in that section. The reason I predicted they would finish 20th is because there's more that could go wrong.
Same points deduction.
Because of the points deduction. Leicester are trying to drag it out. The hearing's not even been sorted yet. Based on what we've seen from the Forest and Everton cases, I think they're probably likely to receive at least a 6-point deduction. There's that reason, because they've had a change in manager as well. Not a lot of the clubs in terms of the promoted clubs, obviously, Ipswich and Southampton have got that consistency with Kieran McKenna and Russell Martin. There was a feeling that their squad was weaker than it was last season. Selling Dewsbury Hall in June, they had a lot of loan players leave. They let a few players go. You don't know what the points deduction is going to be. You don't know how they're going to take to Steve Cooper as a manager. I did say it was possible they could. They could struggle.
On to this weekend's game specifically. This is one that Villa will be targeting as, if they want to be up around the top 4 again, they kind of have to win, which feels silly, 3rd game of the season, but you go to a side that is predicted to be relegated, you want to win. Where are Leicester's weak points? Where can Villa target? Where can they exploit Leicester and win the game, basically?
Perhaps because they didn't have to deal with it as much last season. They've struggled when teams have pressed them. Premier League teams are better organised. They're probably fitter. They're just better at pressing. They have struggled to work it out, and I think they've had a few moments in both the Tottenham and Fulham games. They've just been totally under the cosh, and they've just been unable to work the ball out of their own half. I don't think they defended particularly badly in those moments. I think Wout Faes and Yannick Vestergaard have done a reasonable job at defending the box when crosses have come in. But when there's so many crosses coming in, and when there's so many attempts at through balls, into the penalty area, you're not going to be able to stop them all. It's not necessarily they've got a weakness in defending, but it's the amount of defending they're giving themselves to do has been the issue. Very quickly, score prediction. How do you see it unfolding? Well, Villa are very, very good. As the part of the problem. For you. Slightly hoping that, from a Leicester perspective, it's a problem. I'm slightly hoping they might be distracted by all the nice places they're going to get to go in the Champions League since the draw was made this week. So I'll say 2-1 to Aston Villa. Okay. All right, Jordan, thank you very much for your time. As always, a pleasure to chat, and we'll see you next year. Cheers. Right, John, opposition view done. Thank you to Jordan for joining me earlier today. Just before we get into transfers and the deadline day lack of action, what do you make of Leicester overall? I kind of said during that piece that a lot of people are tipping them to be relegated. Jordan himself has gone 20th, which is crazy to me. I don't know why. Like the Leicester guy to be like, 20th. How do you see them from bits you've seen so far?
The first half against Tottenham, I think they were shocking. But then after the half-time, they played well. So that's why I'm going to the King Power thinking, Villa can win the game, certainly. But if Leicester turn up and they play to their best ability, then Villa will have a harder game, which is very obvious. So, I don't know. It's a game that, if Villa don't win, I'll be pretty frustrated because it's, it feels like one of those at the end of the season where you look back and think, we probably should have won there. But they have a lot of experienced players, Leicester. I was surprised that they went down a few years ago, and I think we all expect Jamie Vardy to be scoring against us as well. But I think they've kept one. Let me quickly find the stat if I've got it. I can't find it. Oh well, they've kept like one clean sheet in. I can't remember any game. Maybe like nearly 30 games or something in the Premier League, which obviously goes back to last season as well. So, yeah, I think that we can definitely go there and have confidence. Fulham is always going to be a difficult game for them. Last weekend, Fulham are good at Craven Cottage. So, yeah, they probably gave a good account of themselves. And I didn't watch the match, but it was 2-1, so a pretty tight match. I think their centre-back a week fast. I thought he wanted to leave. I thought he put in like a transfer request the other day. I don't think anything's happened from that. I'm not totally sure, to be honest. I don't know. But maybe some kind of unsettling things there. I don't know. I think they're about to sign a striker as well, but won't be registered in time. So probably a good time to play Leicester, really, because I think they've probably got a few players through the door now. And once they settle down a bit more, it'll probably be a hard place to go, I think. They're still working out what they're doing under their new manager, essentially. So hopefully Villa can go there, get an early goal, and then Morgan Rogers can tear them apart on the counter-attack and we'll be fine.
I've just got good memories of Bertrand Traore. That's all I can think of.
Oh, my God, yeah. What a moment, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, that podcast moment in itself was a lovely, beautiful moment.
Oh, my God. Yeah. I can
John in tears almost. Oh, I loved it.
You know what? That was for me. That was the moment I was like, Villa are like properly back in it. Because under Emery, we were doing well, like, you know, but it felt like this could still be a false dawn if we lose a few games, because I think we lost against Arsenal and Leicester at home, City as well. And it felt like, okay, are we going to be up and down? But once we did that, I was like, wow, that is so un-Aston Villa-like. Traore to come to the bench and do that, you know, it's mental. At that point onwards, I was like, yeah, we're getting Europe, and we did. So, yeah, happy memories of the King Power.
Okay. Away from match day, then we'll come back to Leicester City in a little bit. The obvious talking point here is transfer deadline day. That is today. The deadline is this evening. As we've been talking about all day, Villa are very unlikely to do anything. If there's something to happen now, I'd be shocked. Before we get into this, there's a comment. I need to read it out from Sarko, who said, "Let's see what the corporates have to say. Will they toe the line? Will they be critical? Stay tuned." I love that, by the way, because if we're not going to be critical of some kind of inclination that we're in bed with the club or we can't say what we think, that's absolutely...
We're the corporate.
Oh, that's about us, yeah, unless I've misread it. I'm expecting this guy thinks we're going to come on and go, well, Villa have done a good job and, you know, kind of backing the club, basically.
We have done a good job.
Which may be our opinion or your opinion. But like this idea that we can't say things because Villa might slap us on the wrist and say, don't say that, is outrageous. That is not the case. We can say what we want. We can be critical. We can praise the club. We've said what we want all the way through this podcast in the 5 years that we've done it. We will never have a case where we are told to say, oh, say this. So don't say that. That will not happen. So, all of that out of the way, are you, John Townley, happy with Villa's transfer window?
I think you have to split it into two. Am I happy with it? Largely happy with it. Yeah. Do I want a bit more? I do. But so did the club. But this isn't Football Manager. And I put a piece out earlier suggesting that Villa probably won't make another edition. But that's not their fault. They want to. They've been working across the whole transfer window to do so. But they've obviously got to work in the PSR framework, the squad cost ratio rules as well from UEFA. So that's another thing that they're having to deal with, which makes it even stricter. If they weren't in, if they didn't have to comply with that, you'd probably see one or two more players added to the team. But even then, they'd have to shift on Diego Carlos. They'd have to shift on other players. So this is such a difficult situation for the club to be in, to add what would have been, by the way, a perfect window. So we're on the balance between, oh, we don't have enough at right back or centre back, therefore it's no good. You know, we've had a bad window. But if we had signed Geertruida, for example, then I think a lot of people would be calling that like a 9 or a 10 out of 10 because we had to sell Louise. But those things are still true. We did still have to sell Louise. We had to sell. We had to raise more funds, and we chose to do that with Diaby to then spend some of that on Amadou Onana. And yeah, it's a shame that we can't add that final piece, in my opinion, which would have been that centre back, right back profile. But simply put, the budget was very, very tight going into today. And it's clearly something that Villa have thought, well, we can't do this. And yeah, Carlos, who picked up an injury last week, basically, or early this week, you know, that kind of ended his chances of leaving the club. Obviously, Fulham were in talks to sign him, that then collapsed. So this is such a difficult situation. Monchi and Vidigani, like, trust me, because we do know from within the club that they are working so damn hard, or they have been, to get to this point where we have Onana, Maatsen, one of the most promising left backs in Europe. We brought in Barkley for extra depth, and as we said earlier, Dan, we do have Kamara to come back. We do have Mings to come back. Buendia, we kind of all forget that is still a player for us. Ramsey, injury-free season. Monchi signed, or on Emery's advice as well, signed Morgan Rogers, who is now, I don't even want to put a price tag on his name. Kosta Nedeljkovic as well is now one of the most promising right backs in Europe as well, I'd go as far as to saying. And yes, as I've said, he's probably a little bit raw still, I think, and will probably make a few more mistakes, which is fine because of his age. Yeah. But he's still there as a player who we signed for 6.5 million plus add-ons. So I think the business we've done is, considering everything that we've had to put up with, has been pretty much spot on. It's just a shame that we can't have taken that extra step. But I feel like that was completely out of our capability, basically. Monchi and Damian and the owners or whatever haven't just thought, oh, we probably should watch our money there and not spend the 20 million that we could, but we don't want to, and we'll just save it. That isn't the case. Like, we've pushed it to the absolute extreme. So yeah, we all knew the situation that we were having in the final weeks of the window. We had to sell players to fund new arrivals and make space for in the squad. It's not an easy thing to do, especially players who, you know, I think Carlos was very good at parts last season, but we're all aware that under Steven Gerrard, we bought Coutinho, which has been a disaster, really. Dendoncker hasn't worked out at all. Luka Din in the end has worked out. Carlos, you know, that's difficult because he had a bad injury, so I'm not going to, you know, criticise him too much. But the point is that he's 2 years left on his deal now, or less than that. Next summer it will be 12 months left. He'll be 32 by then. This was Villa's last chance to really take a fee from him, and this is why the club are now pushing to more youthful players who have capacity to grow and develop under Unai Emery. Because if the day comes that they have to make more sales, or, you know, we don't know what that situation will look like next summer. Hopefully we will get more information shortly. But if that happens, they have lots of options. And again, that isn't, I don't want to sound negative, but that's just the truth about PSR. Villa have pushed their budget completely, and yes, they've spent a lot, but they've also taken in a huge amount as well. So that proves how tight it was this season. So in my opinion, they've done very well considering the circumstances. And I know everyone's got an opinion, but I'm not going to hear that Villa should have done that or they should have done this. Why haven't they done that? Trust me, if they wanted to, or if they felt it was right, it would be done, and we wouldn't be kind of entertaining those ideas.
I think you're right. I think it is a very good window. Obviously, you want more. When we did our Q&A, and I said something like, we're that right back, centre back profile signing away from, I think, being like a genuine top four. Like, you go Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool, Villa, like that is on paper they should be up around that place in the table again. I think the squad that we've got now, again, injuries will happen to various different clubs throughout the season. I still think he's capable of finishing in the top six, and I think that would still be a successful season to be in Europe again.
Oh, sure, yeah.
If certain things go our way, and fifth becomes a Champions League place, and Villa have a slightly better season than we think. Yeah, maybe they're finishing the Champions League places again, and that would be unbelievable. The argument from Brett here and from others as well, we're an Ollie Watkins season injury to being in huge trouble. You could probably say that about most teams in the Premier League.
I would suggest that other teams would have far much more trouble than us, than what we would have. John Duran, I'm going to probably sound like ultra positive here, and this is probably a change because people do think I'm a bit negative sometimes, but I think Duran is probably one of the most, and I've said this about a few players in the last 10 minutes, but you know what, I'm not going to say it, but I think we would be able to cope without Watkins for, yes, if it was months, and that's not ideal, of course it isn't, but if it's a few games, I think we'd get by, put it that way.
I think that's most clubs though. Like,
exactly. This is the thing. Everyone says, oh, if you lose your striker, what are you going to do? Villa cannot buy a player who's better than John Duran. Sorry, I don't think they could replace John Duran in terms of quality and say to them, you're going to play under Ollie Watkins, and then worry about if he's going to get injured. This is the case for every single club, unless you are Man City. Like, it's fantastic. You can just stop them more than.
You then also kind of. Sorry, John. You also then kind of venture into like, this is a bad example, really, but like the Danny Ings kind of signing of going, well, he's experienced, he's scored goals in the Premier League before, he will probably be okay as an understudy, but it's going to cripple you financially. It's not going to be a good deal for the club. In 2 years' time, we're going, oh, we can't shift Daddy Ings, so we can't sign that right back that we need, like we're kind of doing now.
Exactly
We can't do what we want to do because Dendoncker, because Carlos, because what did with Coutinho, because we sat coaches. You know, we're dealing with the Gerrard era basically, and Villa have got their hands tied. And they've done. I think they have done well. And like I said at the top, this will come across as, oh, these guys support the club, so they're just going to say what they think. You know what they think they should say. But I think they have done well.
But you can put it another way. What more? Like, trust me, they've gone to the limit. They literally can't do any more unless we break rules or unless there isn't anything else we could do. We can't force a player to leave the club. That's just not going to happen.
We have to pay them off, and then they're off anyway.
We can't do any more. We've had situations in the past where, I don't know, maybe we haven't had the money to do it, or the owner doesn't want to put in the cash. Right now, there isn't anything that Suarez would want to do more than to fund another £100 million worth of players in the last 2 hours of the window or 3 hours of the window to push ourselves even further. That's exactly what they want to do, but they literally can't because of 2 sets of rules. The second one, UEFA's, as I said, is even more stricter now. And yeah, the club are furious behind the scenes about how they've got to deal with this. Why is it that Villa, just because their revenue isn't as good as Man United or Chelsea's, but Chelsea can spend billions and billions of pounds and essentially get nowhere with it, or, you know, maybe they may get somewhere someday. But I mean, if they won the league next season, I wouldn't even applaud it, because it'd be like, well, yeah, you spent the money to do so. What do you expect? That's the situation. So yeah, frustration for Villa, or the massive frustration, is that other clubs can, or the clubs who they're competing with, they can continue to spend money just because they're selling more shirts and because they're sponsors, because they've had the opportunity over the last decade to do so without the rules really pinching them. There's inflation now, everything costs more, and the rules haven't followed that, if that makes sense. So now Villa, it's just a big squeeze on Villa basically, and they're having to do much more work to get to where they want to and retain what they've done. And Emery said in his presser today, we have to work harder and do more things basically than our rivals, which essentially means we have to be more clever in the market. We have to work harder with a group of players who are less experienced, and a smaller base of players as well, or everything that comes with that. It's a massive challenge that Villa have, and the rules do not help, but you've got to just trust us. The club have done absolutely everything to put the best players in Emery's squad as possible, without also, by the way, they've kept Martinez, they've kept Watkins. Yes, they had to sell Luiz, but we've already gone through that. That was probably the most sellable asset Villa had. And as well, imagine trying to negotiate that in the final days of the window to say to a club, can you buy our player, else we'll lose points? The Premier League clubs will laugh and just say, no, we're not going to do that unless I don't know, we're with 20 million. And that's just farcical. Villa basically had to sell him abroad because of that reason. And then Juventus are the only ones that have done it. Here's 2 players, we'll take them. And Villa have taken 2 very good young players who they didn't think would get in. I'm rambling. Didn't think they'd get into the first team to start. Similar situation to Morgan Rodgers in January. Rodgers impressed. Ramsey got injured. Rodgers then staked his claim basically, and has become a first team player and is what he is now. The same goes for Benacer, for example. Villa didn't think they'd be playing him this season, and they're not. But he's got a brilliant loan move in Valencia. He'll then come back with 38 games under his belt and push for next season to be in the squad. Same goes for Sterling Jr., who'll be playing Champions League football. There's a lot of positives from the window, and I understand the negatives, but you have to contextualise it with what could Villa have done, because really they couldn't have done much more than what they've done now, unless a player was to leave, and that's out of their control, unfortunately.
Couple of points. You said during that, Villa have got to do more than their rivals. Essentially, they've got to kind of be smarter, be box clever. That's good coaching as well. That's on Unai Emery to make the players he has better, and we've seen evidence of that, and we'll continue to see evidence of that. That's what some of the clubs don't have. They don't have a manager as good as that who can take, I don't know, I don't even want to name anyone to be disrespectful, but like take a player of okay quality and make them a Champions League club contender quality. Yeah,
but we saw that we wouldn't be in the Champions League. We may have pushed into Europe if we had a different manager, but there's no way we would have finished 4th under Emery. And we've said before that I don't think there's a coach in world football, maybe Guardiola, I don't even know, that would have done better than what Unai Emery's done. So you're absolutely right. The reason why we're here is literally because of the manager, and the recruitment's been good enough that he can improve those players.
Yeah. And if this was Villa, we've spoke all the way through, and you're right, we get comments saying, I wish John would stop talking about squad size and squad registration, but that is the facts of where Villa are. If we sign another 5 players, we can't register them. Like, do we know what happens to Barcelona? Keep signing players and then having to ship them back because they can't register them. That is where Villa would get to if we keep stockpiling players. If this was Villa with a squad of 18 and space in the squad and still weren't spending, because of the financial restrictions. You're going, well, that's frustrating because we have space. We could get these guys in there, but that's also not the case. The financial restrictions and the rules do not allow Villa to do it. I don't want to see Villa breaking rules and getting points deductions or getting European bans. Things like that are ridiculous. I don't want to be involved with that at all. There's a comment here from Warren, and this will be the last thing I want to kind of end on, because I think we need a transfer video. This is not really the time to go in depth, I don't think. He says, we understand FFP, but they prioritise the wrong positions. I think something that we don't know too much about as fans is how the signings are done. Like, just because we sign, who did we sign first? I can't even remember, like, say Onana. Just because we sign Onana first does not mean that he was our number one target. Well, that was our priority position.
Yeah, I understand the question, because from the outset, when the window started, it was a case of we probably need a right back or a player in that area of the pitch. So I do understand it, but
because we haven't got one, doesn't mean that Villa didn't prioritise it. It means whoever they wanted wasn't available.
Yeah,
or, they couldn't get their guy.
Yeah, try that. But I'd also say with the deals we've done, if you think about the main deals, which is, I mean, Barkley is just to add depth, and it was a minimal fee, 5 million, if that. Ian Maatsen joined. That was a clever PSR deal, essentially. Chelsea needed to raise money, so did we. So we give them Kellyman, we get Maatsen in return. That's and a very good player, by the way. That profile player is what Emery has wanted in Alex Moreno. Villa now have it in a better version and a more younger player who can develop into, I don't know, 50, 60 million pound player.
Yeah.
The other big money signing that we made was Amadou Onana, and we all know why we signed him. We lost Luiz, who was a top midfielder. Replace him for another one, 22 years old, 50 million pounds, record deal.
Rather that than the other way around. 22 million, 50 years old.
Yeah, geez. So those three deals, we know why Villa have done them, and then you're left with the situation of, okay, how do we do the right back / centre back situation? If you kind of follow my drift there, all of those deals, for example, if we didn't replace Luiz, that's obviously a major hole in the squad there. If we wouldn't have got Maatsen, I don't think, if Chelsea didn't need to sell, or if we did, we probably wouldn't have even bothered to prioritise that. We might have gone for the right back instead, but we needed to raise money to sell Kellyman. Like, there's reasons why we did each one. We didn't just think, right, 3 players will go left back, centre mid, and another centre mid, and then we'll target a left winger and Illing Jr. and a centre midfielder and Branachia. Each one was for a reason. Like, Juventus didn't want to sell certain players that we wanted, but then to essentially keep the deal alive that we've kept, we went for Illing Jr. and Branachia. In the end, we all know what happened. But I understand the question. It's just that Villa's complications were so extreme that they couldn't just handpick positions where they wanted to. And then, for example, if Feyenoord needed to, if there was a deal that we could do with Feyenoord that would help them as well, then we would have probably done that. But that wasn't the case. They just said, here's the money that we want for the player. Pay it, basically. And we couldn't do it unless we sold Carlos. So
yeah, like if they say, well, you can have Geertruida for 25 million euros and we'll give you 17 million for Diego Carlos, all of a sudden you go, okay, well, there's something there that benefits both sides.
Yeah, I'm trying to kind of, I do struggle to word things on podcasts, which isn't good, but I think people can understand what I'm trying to say, where if we were to sign a player, there'd be a knock on to that. So if it was Geertruida coming in, Carlos goes. If Maatsen comes in, Kellyman goes. If Duran went, we'd bring in another forward. Maybe it was Felix. I don't know where else to go.
I think there's probably a little bit of extra frustration as well.
Because there's them as well, like Dobbin, but also Onana. I'm sure the Tim thing probably has something to do with Onana as well. But yeah, go on.
There was a stage when I think Emery himself said we were basically working on a 1-in, 1-out policy. And since then, we've shifted Archer, Baron Jaya, Illing Jr., potentially Dendonka, and not brought anyone in. So I think that's an extra level of frustration. People go, well, we've lost players. Why aren't we bringing them in?
Those players, only Branachia was in the squad in my head. We're not thinking. Cameron Archer was we mentioned before, was like an extra because he was a club trained player. He would have fitted in the 25 Premier League squad, I think, anyway. So he was an extra one. But Dendonka was never going to make the team. Neither was when we did the squad at the start of the season. We had Illing Jr. basically between left back and left midfield, and basically said he doesn't fit there. He's going to probably have to leave alone. So everything that we said before, I think, has been pretty much proven to be correct. We had to trim the squad size. That's what we've done. But we couldn't get that extra bit over the line because Carlos didn't leave. And that's kind of full stop, basically.
Yeah. Well, I think that's enough transfer chat. We'll do a whole podcast about it. This is the Leicester City preview. We've talked about transfers because it's deadline day. Hopefully we'll be able to cover most things there. But if we haven't, leave a comment down below and we'll try and cover them as best we can at some point next week or even the week after.
We're not saying that we're correct, and we're just giving out what we know. And again, knowing some stuff within the club, we're just kind of trying to relay exactly why things have happened. But everyone's exactly right about their opinion about, oh, we could have done this, or why do we do this? Absolutely valid questions, though. So more than happy to do like a 2-hour debate on it. It's a good topic.
It's also kind of like the similar feelings of looking at the starting 11 before a match and going, oh, so-and-so's playing, that means we're going to struggle here and this is going to be difficult. Like, it's literally an unknown. And I know that if we only ever talked about things that had happened, that kind of negates a lot of football conversation. But maybe Maatsen is like unbelievable. Maybe Nedeljkovic like develops way beyond. Like, Morgan Rogers was not expected to be what he is now 6 months ago. Yeah. Maybe Nedeljkovic is a brilliant right back in 6 months' time. We're all going, oh, well, I'm glad we didn't spend 30 million on whoever, because he's already replaced Matty Cash. Diego Carlos has had the season of his life. Like, it's all unknowns at this stage. So to go, oh, we're not as good as we were last year, we don't know that. We'll find out over the remaining 35 games.
Yeah, and just to kind of end with it as well, if you look at someone who's in a comparable position to us, which is Newcastle, a team who's trying to punch up to those top 4 positions again, like we did. They have done it previously, and obviously they have money to spend. So do we. They obviously bid a lot for Mark Gay, and they have things to money to spend, but they're in a different situation where there seems to be kind of politics behind the scenes between Eddie Howe and their sporting director and stuff. I'd much rather be in this position where Monchi, Vidigani, and Emery, they know exactly what they're doing, or they're all connected as such, and they know what each other wants. Suarez is there as well. Everything behind the scenes on the football department is perfect. So I'm absolutely happy with it. But other clubs elsewhere, you can see a bit of panic that they can't spend, and that they're trying to follow the rules, but at the same time they don't really know what to do. I think we know what we're doing. We're just waiting to increase revenue, essentially.
Well, this is what I said before. The other clubs don't have Unai Emery. Like, they're scrabbling around thinking we're getting desperate because they, in my opinion, cannot coach players as well as he can. So they're going, well, we can't make X player better than their value. We need recruitment. We need to spend a fortune. Whereas with Emery, if he's told, oh, you've got to stick with Matty Cash this year because we can't work it because of financial restrictions, he'll do his absolute best with his coaching staff to make Matty Cash a better player. And, all those things remain to be seen as the season pans out. Right, okay, we're going to move on to predicted 11. Let's talk back about Leicester then. This weekend, the focus on Saturday, 3 o'clock, our first 3 o'clock kickoff of the season. I feel like the team mostly picks itself. I've said on the last couple of episodes, I feel like this is Maatsen's game to start now. I think he's come off the bench in both. I feel like this is his time to kind of make a claim. We're going to have the ball. We're going to be going forward. He's a better option than Luca Dean. Obviously, the other side, Matty Cash is injured, so Nedeljkovic, has to play because Konsa has to play centre back because Carlos is injured. So I think that's the defence. And Arna and Tielemans, Bailey on the right, McGinn on the left, Rogers behind Watkins. Is that the team?
Yeah, I'd say it's. I don't know. I kind of think Dean might start though at left back. Just because,
okay. Well, I've made a graphic, John, and I've put Maatsen, so we're going with that. Okay.
No, I'm only saying maybe. I'm only saying that just because Nedeljkovic is coming into the back 4 and 2 changes in a back 4.
Yeah,
maybe one too many. I don't know, but I'm with you. I think it's probably about time Maatsen. I mean, anytime I say this, I always say, yeah, but Dean's done so well, and I think he's, solid or whatever. And I do agree with that, but yeah, Maatsen has been sensational when he's come on off the bench. So maybe it's time for him to get a start. Maybe it's after the international break, to say, just because 2 changes to a back 4 might be one too many. But we'll find out. Also, Fata was a very decent player for Leicester as well, and any kind of attack they have seems to be going down that right side, so that might be an area to watch out for as well.
And what that graphic doesn't show, and I'm going to have to try and think, or we're both going to have to think off the top of our heads of the substitute bench options. When people talk about we're not as good as we were last year, when you can call on Buendia, Villagine,
Duran Ramsey,
Dean or Maatsen, whoever doesn't start.
Maatsen, yeah.
That team, that bench, and those options are so much stronger than we had last year. Like,
yeah,
the first 11, yeah, you can argue, but Anana is not Louise, whatever. Again, maybe Anana is brilliant for us this season, and it is different to Louise. But those options allow us to do different things. I think the squad is undoubtedly better than it was last year. The first 11, yes, I get the concerns that it might not be. Like, the goal contributions of Louise and Diaby, I get all that. But the squad as a whole is definitely better, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Injuries will happen over the course of the season. Unfortunately, we've got 2 right now. And you kind of think whatever, like, doesn't surprise you. But even with 2 injuries, we still fill out the bench well. Again, we are light in those positions, don't get me wrong. But if Carlos and Cash were both fit, you are struggling to think, well, someone or maybe two senior players is left out or are left out, sorry. And especially when Mings and Kamara come back, there's going to be, if we have a fully fit squad, no injuries, hopefully that happens at some point. 3, maybe 4 senior players don't make the bench, which is quite remarkable, really. So I don't think that'll be a situation. Villa will always have a couple of injuries here and there, I'm sure, because that's just the way it goes. But yeah, there's certainly enough depth there, especially in those attacking areas that can come off the bench and make a difference.
Okay, final part of the show then is our score predictions. We track every single prediction through the match preview on a spreadsheet. We get points for correct outcome. Is 1 point. Correct scoreline, get it bang on, is 3 points. So far, 0 points for both John and I. We've both got West Ham and Arsenal wrong in every sense. We went West Ham draw, both of us, and it was a win. I thought we might beat Arsenal. I said 2-1, and in the end, we could have scored, probably should have scored 2 goals. You said 2-2, and it was a 2-1 defeat. So nothing for us both. Leicester this weekend, 3:00 kickoff. A new thing this year is that we write our predictions down now and show them, so neither of us can change our mind. I can tell that John is writing his away on his phone. For those that are listening, looks like he's concentrating. I'm old-fashioned and have a piece of paper. Are you ready?
No, sorry.
I was going to say we'll reveal them on 3, but you're not ready.
Wait me 1 second. Hold on.
I'll cut this out of the edit for those that are watching live.
All right. Okay, I'm ready now.
Okay, right. On 3 then. These are our score predictions for Leicester City versus Aston Villa. 3. You can see mine already. Got a 0 there. 3, 2, 1.
Ooh.
Okay, I've gone 4-0 Villa. John's gone 3-1 Villa.
Yeah.
Would you be disappointed if we don't win?
Yeah. Disappointed if we don't win for sure. And I always say you need to take into context what happens, like injuries, whatever. But we have enough to win that game, even if we have to call on the subs bench in the last 20 minutes. We should be winning the football match basically if we play well. And going into the international break, it would be nice to end this kind of. There's lots to say about the transfer window, lots to say about the start of the season and whatever has happened up until now. But get this game done, get tonight done, get tomorrow done, and then September international break. There's another one coming after that as well, but it feels like I don't like how the window overlaps into the start of the season. Even the Champions League draw. I wish that was at the start, but I get why, because they've got qualifiers and stuff. But yeah, tomorrow feels like the end of the start of the season, basically, which sounds weird.
Yeah. There's a comment here, which is how I feel. Jason says, this year I want to see us beat all the mediocre teams. I think we said this possibly on one of the podcasts we did this week, that I think that bottom 6 Villa should have enough to beat both of those home and away. Like, I know football doesn't work like that, but I would like to see us just go, Leicester, they're going to be rubbish this year, we all think. Just go there and win. No frills, no fuss. Get the job done. Come away with 3 points. And it's what we said about the West Ham game as well. You don't want to feel like that is wasted by winning it, because you kind of go, 4 points from these first 3 would have been good, but when you've already got 3 like ahead of schedule, if we only have 4 points now out of these 3, that's because we've drawn the game tomorrow, and that isn't great. So really, you want 6 points out of these first 3, and you go, okay, well, for most of us, that's above where we thought we'd be, and that is a great start to the season then.
Yeah, exactly. It would be drop points tomorrow if we don't win, even if we would score a 95th minute equaliser. It won't feel right, because we know what we're capable of, basically. Even last season when we drew to Sheffield United at home, it was like, but we've won so many games at home and we've had such a good start. I almost didn't really care too much, because it was like, okay, but we know where we are. At the start of the season, you want to continue to build that momentum. You don't want to kind of a stop-start essentially. So yeah, another win tomorrow, 6 points on the board. It'll put us in good shape going into the break.
Okay. All right, John, that is the end of this week's Inside Bodymoor preview show. Lots discussed because of the transfer conversation. We've hit the 50-minute mark, which is pretty crazy. Thanks, everyone, for choosing our podcast to tune into live on Friday evening. The deadline is, a couple of hours away. I'd be amazed if Villa signed somebody. Although I did say, and I will hold my hands up, somebody contacted me, I don't know, probably 3 weeks ago now, saying, will Villa sign anyone else? And I was like, yeah, definitely. Surely we'll sign someone else. And he said, no, we won't. And looks like that guy was right, sadly, for Villa. But it is what it is. We've talked about it enough. John, thanks for joining me as always. Appreciate your insight and opinion. We'll be back with some kind of content throughout the international break. We might take our foot off the gas ever so slightly. I don't think we're doing 5 episodes a week during the international break, but we'll still try and do a Q&A. We've got the Villa Social launching next week. We're recording that on the 6th of September, so it'll be out, around that kind of time. So yeah, there'll be still content from Claret and Blue, but we'll kind of have a little bit of a break ourselves, I think. Right, that's enough. John, thanks for joining me. Thanks everyone for watching or listening, and we'll see you tomorrow for the post-match. Bye-bye.